coastal eclectic granny doodles, perfect for summer in the garden or the thrift shop. That's all coming up in today's beginner-friendly tutorial. Grab your pencils and your tea and come sit down because today we're painting granny core. Welcome back. My name is Shayda Campbell, and around here we make art and it's fun, not scary. And we are going to draw all things granny, starting with some beautiful hydrangeas, and Granny would put them in like a thrifted ceramic vase, a pitcher. So that's what we're drawing. And what you're going to notice about all the little silly illustrations today is they start with a very messy sketch. If it's in your head, just get it out onto the paper. It doesn't matter if it looks weird. Weird is good, okay? And then you're going to grab a pen. I am using the Lyra Magna pens, which I love, and this is the brush tip. These brush pens are really good for doing these sort of thick and thin lines. You can see sometimes I do a really, really delicate little thin line, and then other times I want to go a bit thicker. I will even add to the sketch. For example, for the drawing, like the messy flowers on the vase, I went really thin, and then I want to do like a little shading at the bottom. I just do a thick line. Okay, let's do another one. How about lemons? Coastal Granny would love to have a little lemon tree in her yard. So start with 2 ovals, and then we're gonna give them the little nubbins. But again, it's messy. Just sketch it. If it looks weird, what's another way to say weird is good? Perfectly imperfect, wabi-sabi. How about that, okay? Grab your black brush pen and try to add a little extra pressure on the left-hand side. Then using the very fine, delicate tip, you're just gonna do some dotting, sketch those messy leaves and stems, and you can go a little lighter, a little thinner on those lines. That mix of thick and thin lines is what gives our silly, whimsical, messy little doodles a nice, cool, artsy look. And I even go back in and thicken some of the lines. I'm allowed to cheat. It's my video. Okay, next up, we are going to draw a seashell because coastal eclectic granny, she lives on the sea. I start with a little nubbin, and then I do these kind of donut shapes below it, and then we do the mega donut down at the bottom, and then I kind of make it like a little more angled, a little more square, and you can put some curving lines on there as well. Let's go over it in pen so you can see what I'm doing. Start by tracing the perimeter of the entire shell. Doesn't have to be perfect. Then do those curving lines, but just make them a bit broken. And then even thinner, even more delicate are the vertical lines that kind of add the coloration to the shell. Next, a teacup, because Granny has to have tea. I know, we've drawn a lot of teacups on this channel, but she must have one. Start with an oval, then draw the cup shape below that oval, give it a little handle, maybe a base, and then for the design, I'm doing like hearts. We'll come back to it. Next up, a crate of strawberries fresh from the farmer's market, and you just do a line and then a shallow V at the base of the line, another shallow V at the top of the line. That makes the crate, and then from there, you're doing like rounded kind of heart shapes for all the strawberries. Now in pen, you can really see what I'm doing. For the cup, we've got the shallow oval at the top, and then you could put another line in there to show the T, and then the cup shape below, put a little handle, and then as I said, I'm like scribbling hearts for the design. For the crate, we've got a line with the V shape at the top, V shape at the bottom, and then connect it all with broken lines. And then up here, we're gonna do strawberries. Make sure to give some of them little tops. If they have the leaves on them, it helps them to look more three-dimensional. And of course, you're not gonna see all of them. You can just do some like lumpy shapes to show that the crate is like bursting full of strawberries. And don't forget the seeds as well. Okay, next I want to do like a raised garden bed. Granny would die to have like a nice garden in her backyard. Maybe that's just me. So we start by doing a rectangle for the raised bed, and then I'm going to put tomatoes in here. So we'll do a whole bunch of little circles, just like the strawberries. Placing a little burst of leaves helps that tomato to look really round and three-dimensional. And then I'm putting 2 stakes in here, so just little lines up top, lots of tomatoes, and also the tomatoes are surrounded by lots of foliage leaves. And then maybe over here we've got some lavender, so I'm kind of doing stems with scribbles around them. These sketches are meant to be quick and silly, and just draw what's in your head. And if it looks weird, fine, it looks weird. That's the magic of your art. That is your unique special style at the moment, and I love to see an illustrator that has the courage to present the world in a new way, even if it is kind of ugly or kind of strange or kind of unexpected. So we've got the tomatoes surrounded by some lumps for leaves, the stakes, and then the lavender, again, just lines with some little squiggles. For the raised bed, it's basically a rectangle with a few lines to show the boards. And that's that. Now, I don't want to freak you out, but next up, we are going to draw Granny. I mean, she's basically me. She's every woman that loves to garden and books. It's everybody, okay? So start with an oval for the head, line for the center body, and then the two arms, which are just lines. You're drawing a stick man. And then we do what I call dressing the stick man. And you can start to draw sleeves, maybe a little crease at the elbow or the armpit. I'm going to put a big old bouquet of flowers in her arms. I'm kind of building out her cardigan and then a skirt. And then we just have to draw two little sort of feet poking out at the bottom here. So start with that stick man and dress it, a little bit of curly, messy hair. And then I like to erase a bit just because things get so sketchy and messy. And then I leave just enough of a sketch that I can see to put a sort of nicer drawing back on top afterwards. For the face, draw a cross. The ears are right at the center. The eyes are in line with the ears on that center line. And then a little L shape for the nose. You could add a hat if you like, if you're fancy like that. And let's go over it in pen. We'll doodle a very simple jar, could be honey or jam. And we're also going to do a market tote bag. For the tote, I do just the tote bag shape with the handle. And then it's nice to put some flowers in there or a cabbage or a baguette, but it's all basically just scribbles. You can get very loose with this stuff. For the jar, it's like a rounded square, and then you can put a label on it. I've got my baguette there. Just doing those little semicircles or ovals on the bread really shows what it is. You can place some flowers peeking over the top of the bag and maybe add a little crisscross to show that it is a woven or straw tote bag. Granny absolutely needs a chicken at the cottage, so start with an angled line. You can give it some shape, do the feathers for the butt, and then he kind of has like a little leg. They're not much of a leg, it's like a little nubbin, and then the 2 feet. You can put a little wing shape, and then his head is basically beak with that little wagadoodle thing down below. Put some grass under him. Let's go over it in pen. So the angled line, the fluffy bum, the little bit of a leg with the 2 feet. You can add a wing, and then he's got the beak, the eye, and his little chin thingy. Okay, so there's Grandma's chicken. This is pretty much it for the doodles. I'm going to write eclectic coastal granny there. And then I'm kind of just looking at the piece as a whole and asking myself, where do I have a little too much negative space? I decided to put some little sunglasses up there and some scissors down here. And to help fill space, I added a tag to the honey jar. So if you're doing this too, you might not get everything in exactly the right spot in your sketchbook. You can always add little hearts or flowers or sunglasses, small, tiny things. I ended up doing some little strawberry blossoms here. So, okay. That was a lot, I know, but we're going to add some color to our doodles, and I am using my Shayda Campbell watercolor palette. This is available on Amazon. As I said, all supplies are linked in the description. It's a great little set of watercolors. I've gotten so many wonderful comments and DMs telling me how much you love the quality of these paints, and I couldn't agree more. They're excellent paints at an excellent price point. So mix up a nice red. I am using Rose Madder Hue mixed with a little bit of burnt umber, and we are going to, it makes a really beautiful cherry red. We're going to paint a bunch of red stuff, so the sunglasses, the strawberries, and all I do when I add watercolor to illustrations or doodles like this is I try to be really free with it and not get things too right. So when I'm painting something like the strawberries, I leave a little negative space. You want to see some white paper showing up through and in between the berries or in between the flowers. So think perfectly imperfect. I mean, it's a Shayda Campbell video, so you probably have that mantra already, so you're setting yourself up for success. I'm using a very light baby blue, so this is some turquoise and ultramarine mixed with lots of white, and we did kind of a crisscross to make her dress look like gingham. And then I'm going to take that same light blue and paint the hydrangea. I also put in a little bit of a purpley hydrangea. Take some paper towel, maybe lift a little color. Lifting is a great idea when you're painting a fluffy flower like a hydrangea. Lifting is great for everything. You could use it on the woven bag to help build up texture. You know, lifting is just what it sounds like. You can use a paper towel to do it. It's great for wood. It's great for chicken with feathers. Anytime you just want to kind of build up texture and depth. And that's exactly what we're doing. We kind of started light with the chicken, and then we're going back in and adding more feathers. Same thing with the lemons. I want a light bit. I want lots of white negative space. You know, that's how we get that perfectly imperfect look. My 2 tips are building up colors slowly by starting light and lifting and then slowly getting darker. And my second and maybe most important tip is just leave lots of page showing through. Make it very messy and whimsical. And I think you can't help but create something that looks very artsy and painterly and lovely. It also helps things not to look too heavy and muddled. When you leave that page showing through, it looks light and fun and lovely. Okay, let's mix up a color for Granny's skin. I am sort of basing her on me, so I am using white with a little bit of raw sienna and a little bit of red, and it just gives me a nice light peach. And then I'm going to come back over here and finish up Mr. Chicken. I might add a little bit of darker red to some of those tomatoes. I'm also going to do another gingham. So again, start with the vertical lines and just do some messy horizontal lines going through. It does not have to be perfect. And for our pottery, for all of our thrifted vessels and cups, we're going to use ultramarine mixed with Payne's gray. So it's a really dark, dark blue. And, you know, for that vase, it's basically just dots, but it kind of looks like flowers, like it kind of looks like a beautiful porcelain floral vase. So we're always hinting at the idea of something without actually really doing it. Granny's hat I actually thought was a little too big. Well, guess what? You can just make it smaller when you paint. Yes, the lines won't match up, but that's a good thing. That's what I've been saying all along. We want things to look a little wonky and whimsical. Okay, we're really in the home stretch. I did some color on the seashell, then lifted it a bit so it wouldn't look too perfect. I'm going to darken up some of the brown bits, so the raised bed, the tea, maybe the brim of her hat could use a little bit of shading. I still needed to paint the teacups. I'm using the same dark blue so that there's a nice flow and consistency within this composition. When we do these doodles, I like to, focus on each thing and show you guys here's how to paint a lemon, here's how to paint a strawberry, but I also like the overall composition to look good as a whole. So that's why I use some of the same colors over and over, and that's why I put in all those little illustrations to kind of give the whole page a nice balance. Just using a really light brown, this is actually raw sienna for the box, the bin of strawberries. I have to paint my little apple or strawberry blossoms. I'm going to give Granny some rosy cheeks, and we can add a little shading to her neck and the tops of her legs, so anywhere where the sun wouldn't hit as easily. And yeah, I'm adding gray to some of her little cardigan, adding a bit more to the lavender, and that's about it, guys. I decided the composition needed a few more little blue flowers kind of poking off the page, so I just added a little pen to them afterwards, and that's it. Coastal Eclectic Grandma sketches, doodles, illustrations, they are complete. I had so much fun with this one.